There was a time when I believed I would love myself after reaching a certain goal. Maybe when I became more successful, when life felt more stable, when I was less tired and less lost. Only later did I realize that this was not motivation. It was a very subtle form of procrastination, a delay in treating myself with kindness. Hello, my dear friend. I'm Xavier, and you're listening to Heal and Grow podcast, a space where we slow down, listen to ourselves, and learn how to grow in a gentler way. I used to believe that I had to become a better version of myself in order to be worthy of love. But while I was busy chasing that version, I didn't notice that the person I already was slowly burning out. I constantly ignored the signs of exhaustion in my body, pushing myself to do a little more even when I was already beyond my limit. I ate in a rush, stayed up late, and kept telling myself that I would rest after this task was done. But that promise was always postponed. I became used to enduring everything in silence and calling it maturity, without realizing that I was neglecting myself little by little. Until one day, everything became too much. In the quiet of the night, I suddenly broke down in tears and asked myself an honest question. Was I really working for my future, or was I simply avoiding staying with the exhaustion I felt in the present moment? Before we go any further, let me ask you something. How long has it been since you allowed yourself to feel tired without guilt, sad without a reason, or slow down without blaming yourself? Maybe you've become so used to having to be strong, to always be okay, that you've forgotten you also deserve care and attention, just like anyone else. And perhaps as you sit with that question, you'll notice something very familiar. When things don't go as planned, our first reaction is often to turn against ourselves. We think that if we are harsher, if we push ourselves harder, everything will improve. But this habit of self-blame is often the very thing that quietly drains us and pulls us further away from ourselves. There is something I realized much later than I wish I had. No one learns how to love themselves by constantly blaming who they are. In the past, whenever I made a mistake, fell behind, or failed to reach what I hoped for, my automatic reaction was to be even harder on myself. I believed that this strictness would help me improve faster. In reality, it only drained me. Whenever you want to relearn how to love yourself a little more, imagine someone who is lost in a forest. What happens if that person keeps scolding themselves for taking the wrong path? They would likely become more panicked, more exhausted, more confused, and even less able to see clearly. But if that person allows themselves to pause, sit down, breathe, and look around to understand where they are, their chances of finding the way forward become much higher. Self-love works in the same way. It does not instantly show you the right path, and it does not make all of life's problems disappear. But it keeps you from making everything worse through panic and self-blame. Only when you stay with yourself can you become calm enough to see what is really happening, instead of rushing and making things harder than they already are. When you practice self-love in a healthier way, you no longer waste so much energy attacking yourself. You preserve that energy for what truly matters. You learn to pause before reacting and to breathe before deciding. Life is already harsh enough. If you keep dragging yourself forward with blame, pressure, and cruelty, you will eventually run out of strength. Loving yourself does not make life easier overnight, but it gives you a safe place to return to. And when everyone else walks away, at the very least, you can still lean on yourself. In truth, loving yourself is not something grand or lofty. It simply begins when you stop abandoning yourself in the small moments of everyday life. Every minute that passes gives us a chance to practice and nurture self-love through very simple, concrete choices. I spoke in depth about choices that support your mind, body, and emotional well-being in the podcast episode Becoming a Better Version of Yourself, which you can revisit in the playlist. In today's episode, I simply want to emphasize this. Self-love always begins in the moment you become aware of the small choices you make each day. It shows up when you choose to nourish your body with healthier meals instead of relying too much on food that drains your energy. It shows up when you choose to read, watch, or listen to content that supports your mental and emotional health, rather than staying immersed in negativity for too long. It shows up when you choose to step away from what is slowly draining you and move closer to what makes you feel lighter, safer, and more like yourself. It shows up when you make time for things that nourish you from the inside, even if it is just a proper meal, enough sleep, or a few quiet minutes without interruption. It shows up when you feel tired and allow yourself to pause for a few minutes instead of pushing harder just to prove something. When you make a mistake, you do not rush to blame yourself, but remind yourself that everyone makes mistakes and that you are learning. When your heart feels heavy, you give yourself a moment to breathe deeply, drink a glass of water, or simply sit still and acknowledge the emotion that is present. Sometimes, self-love is simply listening to your body when it needs rest, and listening to your emotions when they need to be acknowledged. These small actions may not change your life immediately, but little by little, they help you feel safer within yourself. And it is from this sense of safety that you gain the strength to face things, to change, and to continue growing in a gentler way. Perhaps loving yourself again is not something dramatic at all. It is simply choosing to stand on your own side, even on days when you are not okay. It is choosing not to walk away from yourself when you need yourself the most. Because if you are not willing to stay with yourself, no one else can do that for you. I hope that after this podcast episode comes to an end, you will treat yourself a little more gently, even if today feels heavy. Please remember that you do not need to become someone else to be worthy of love. Staying with yourself is already enough. I wish you a peaceful, restful night, and I look forward to meeting you again in the next episodes.